going to start off this week with some logic lights. Now the reason I'm doing these quite early on is the way that I'm going to be doing this, there's going to be an awful lot of LED lights to make. So what I'll do is I'll get these lights printed off first of all, and then basically I was talking to a friend of mine, Horlicks, and I said, oh, there's going to be an awful lot to do, and he says, well, why don't you just do 10 a week, which I think is an excellent idea. So I'm going to get these out quite early on, and then we can just do our 10 LEDs every week. Now this is the logic lights. Now most of Mr. Badley's files, they say you don't need support, but actually you wouldn't need support on these. Sorry, my apologies. If I rotate these, because I think these are actually flat. There we go. So that looks, yeah, no, I think they are going to need supports. So I'm going to just play it safe. I'm going to play these safe. Now you can buy logic light displays, however I've decided to make my own. It's going to be a lot cheaper, so yeah, so this is something that I've made. I'm trying to find the right, so two files that I made. One is a plate that's going to go into the back of the LED, into the logic light. As you see, there's an 8x5 display there, and then I've got two little files which I've called spacers. I will explain why I've done that later on. Now we're going to need I'm trying to think how many we need now. We need two of these boards, so we'll make another one of those, and we're going to need 4 spacers. Multiply 2 more, so there we've got 4, and I'll just arrange those on the. Sometimes Cura makes them all in a nice neat order. So there we go, we'll get those printed off. Unfortunately I don't have the video for it, as most of mine seem to have been going, but I'll be able to show you those anyway. So there we go, it's only a 2-hour print for all of those with supports on. Okay, so this is the dome panel that's going to house the logic lights. This is the logic light which I've cleaned up with the supports. This is the panel that I've made. As you see, there's an 8x5 grid, and we've got 2 spacers. I'll explain the spacers, and I've got 2 screws. Now I've put a notch in the panel, and that's just so that I can identify top from bottom. Now I've made this to fit these screws, and these screws are slightly too long. That's why I've put the spacer in, and then all we're going to do is just screw that into there. Just get that started. And I did actually take quite a few attempts at making this. I don't know if that's normal for designing things, but I have found that only 2 screws is enough. You don't really need all 4, even though there are 4 holes on the logic lights. Okay, and I've made it an L shape, because obviously we don't want to block off that hole there. So we'll just get those in. Now what we're going to be doing is, there's something like 200 LEDs that we're going to need for the small and the large logic lights, and that's going to be an awful lot to do. I have done some of the LEDs already. I did them on my Twitch show, and once I kind of got into the rhythm, I was doing one logic light in about 3.5 to 4 minutes. So that's why we've decided we're going to do about 10 a week. So there's the logic light panel, and that will go, I can't remember which way round this goes, so I'll just pop it straight in. Right, so that will go in like so, and then what's going to happen is the LEDs in there are going to flash. So what will eventually happen, these are some of the LEDs that I've made. Now I've made the cables very long. They probably only need to be about that long, but it's going to be easier to do have them too long and then cut them down to shape rather than not long enough. Now I will make some of these, and then what I will do, rather than making them every week on stream, I'll just play back the same video clip each week, just to remind people how to do them. If I begin them this week and then somebody comes in, starts watching the video, say from episode 30, they're not going to know what's going on. So what's going to happen is they will just simply push into there. I don't know if you can see that light in that top corner. And then these ones are all blue lights. I thought they would look really good, but I got clear bulbs, as you can see, and the only problem with having clear bulbs is that you can't tell them apart from other bulbs. Now this is going to be quite messy and quite awkward. If I had advanced electronic knowledge, I could probably do this a lot neater and a lot smarter. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to do it that way, so I'm doing it a very simplified method, which is to pop in the 40 bulbs, and then what we will do, we will have these linked up to an Arduino, and these live, this one doesn't seem to want to fit properly. Okay, that's obviously got a little bit. So what we will do is, once we've got all the 40 bulbs in there, we'll just bend over the wires so they all point in one direction only. These live cables, which are in red, they will all join up into groups of 3 or 4, so there'll be 12. That will go from 40 wires down to 12. Excuse me. Those 12 will then go into separate pins into the Arduino, and then we'll make up a little sketch that will blink them randomly, so each one of those pins will control either 3 or 4 bulbs, and then they'll turn them on, they'll turn them off. Then all of the ground cables, they will all join up into one, and they will go into the ground, so that we've got a loop connection. And we'll do that with the help of some PCBs. I think I've got one ready somewhere. It's not actually ready, it's just a PCB. There we go. So we might end up using 2 PCBs, but what's going to happen is, I can't get this out. There we go. So we'll have a PCB of some description that sits over the top. These live cables will then get soldered into there, and then there'll be resistors. The negatives will get connected into there as well, and then this PCB will then go to the Arduino, which will probably sit on top of that. At this particular stage of the project, I haven't actually decided if I'm going to go with an Arduino Mini just to control the logic lights, an Arduino Uno, or if I might go for an Arduino Mega, and I'll be able to control all of the logic lights and possibly all of the servos all from one unit. So yeah, that's the how the LEDs are going to go in. As you can see now, I have a row of bulbs, and then once they're working, that will be flashing blue and white. Okay, so I do apologise, you're going to be watching this video every single week now for quite a few weeks. The reason I'm going to be showing it over and over is because obviously if somebody comes in part of the way through the series and I say do the LEDs in the normal manner, you may not necessarily know how to do it. So I'm going to start off with some LEDs. Now, as I said before, these are all white. So obviously the first thing you need to do, apart from checking them, you need to know what colour they are. So on this particular case we're going to do white, but the same principle will apply for all bulbs. So I've set up a very simple circuit here. You don't need to use an Arduino, you just need a power supply. You could use a 1.5 volt battery, and we've basically got power, and then we've got the ground, and all I need to do is just plug that in. This is actually set up for a blink, so it may not work immediately. Now with an LED you have one pin is longer than the other. That is generally, the longer pin is generally the positive. If it doesn't have one pin longer than the other, I can't really show you on here, but on one side there'll be a little flat edge, and that flat edge which is there is generally the negative. So there's a little edge there, so that's the negative, that's the positive, and all I'll do is we'll just plug that in there and hopefully that should come on. There we go, that's come on. So we know that works, and that's a white bulb. Now if you're going to do 10 of these, I would check 10 and then just pop them somewhere safe. So the next thing we're going to do, we got this, it's called a helping hands, and it's I'm just going to pop my light on now, and then obviously the less hands we have using, the better. And all I'm going to do is just pop the LED into there, and we'll keep that nice and safe. I've got my solder iron is warming up, so meanwhile what we're going to do is we're going to get 2 wires. Doesn't matter what colour wires you use, however if you follow a colour code, obviously that will make life a lot simpler at a later stage. Now I'm going to cut this wire too long rather than too short, because if we cut it too long we can always trim it down when we come to use it. Obviously if we make it too short it's not going to work. So 2 wires, and they should be long enough. And all I'm going to do, excuse the way I'm doing this, I've actually mislaid my my wire stripper. We need to strip a tiny bit of wire on one end, just a tiny bit. This is just for the future connection. Sorry I've not got that on camera. So I've just stripped a little bit of wire on that end, and I've stripped quite a lot on this end. The reason I'm going to strip quite a lot on this end, we're actually going to wrap that round the LED. Now when we come to solder, I need to hold that onto there, I need to hold the solder, I need to hold the solder iron. I've only got 2 hands, so the simplest way I found is to just, because I've stripped this so long, just make sure that is the right one. We're going to just wrap that around like so. Just move that up a bit. And just wrap that around until the plastic meets the LED. So we're basically just going to extend that leg. And then what we'll do is we'll get a little bit of solder, and now I'm actually technically doing this wrong, but just spread some solder along there. Now it will go shiny, and once it goes dry, once it goes cold, it then goes kind of a matte finish, and then we just double check that just by pulling that. That one's fine, and then we do the same for the negative, or the ground as people call it. I keep calling it negative. I grew up with live and negative, but it seems that with electronics these are referred to as ground. There we go. So we've got that one on there. I say it is a lot easier to do a big batch of these, although I'm only going to show you the one, because it takes a certain amount of time to set up your unit. And we just pop a little bit of solder on there and just spread it around. Try and get this as flat as you can, because we're going to put some heat shrink tubing on it, and we want to make sure that tubing fits. Okay, so that's going to be the last one I do today. So obviously I've switched the solder iron off. We're checking that wire isn't going anywhere. So next thing we need is some heat shrink tubing, and again, colors aren't important. However, if you use a color code, then it makes it easier when you come to put it all in together. So this particular heat shrink is 1.6 mil, which will shrink down to 0.8. So long as it's the shrunk diameter is no larger than the size of the LEDs. Obviously, if I use, say for example, 10 mil heat shrink, and these are 1 mil, then obviously it's going to shrink down to about 5 mil, and it won't fit over the top. So I've used black for ground and red for positive, and you can use a lighter, but I'm actually going to be using, I've switched the whole thing off, haven't I? Right, there we go. Right, so I've actually got a heat gun, and all I'm going to do is I'm just going to pop that heat gun over there, and that will shrink the tubing down. It'll go a little bit sticky until it cools down, and that is your LED, and that's all there is to it. The only thing I would say, obviously when you've got a big load of LEDs, it could get a little bit confusing. So what I've actually done, let me just move my camera up. I've just printed off a little sheet of colours, and what I plan to do is we'll just cut one of these out, and this is just really for a marker, so that when we come to I really should have lifted that off the sheet first, shouldn't I? Never mind. So what I can do is just wrap this around one of the terminals, and then when we come back to this, we now know what colour it is because it's got a little label on it. So the last thing, obviously, we've been playing with hot things. Hot things can kill electrics, so what we will do is we will plug this back in, and hopefully it will flash if everything's gone correct. And there we go, that's what, let me just turn the light out. There we go, that's working absolutely fine. So what's that? Well, it's about 9 minutes to explain it to you, but yeah, probably about 3.5 minutes per bulb. So from next week I will tack this on to the end of the video, and so that obviously it will act as a reminder, yeah, so if we do 10 of these a week, and I'll just explain each week what 10 I'm doing. So welcome to the next stage of the build, and I'm going to be honest with you, this is a stage that I've really not been looking forward to. What we're going to do is we're actually going to fill the dome with filler. So the reason I was not looking forward to it was if it goes wrong. I've never used car body filler before. However, I kind of come to the conclusion that there's only going to be 3 results. The first result is I'll get it spot on. Brilliant, lovely. The next result is that I don't put enough filler on, so I have to put more on. And the third result is I put way too much on and I just have to sand it all down. So I thought, right, let's go for it. So what we're going to do, this is what we're going to need. This is a small filler that I bought, sorry. This is, I didn't know how much I'd need, and I went into a shop. Now, top tip for you, if you don't know what you're looking for, go into a shop and tell them exactly what you're doing. As soon as you mention R2D2 full sized, they love it and they're all over you. So this is what I've got. I've actually since been to Halfords and I've bought a big massive one, but this is impossible to get open. There we go. So what we've got there is, I've not even ever opened this. So we've got a tin of 2-part filler. This is the main filler. This is a hardener. Now, I've never ever used this before, so I don't know how this is going to turn out. I've bought myself some little scrapers from Poundland, and these are quite good because they're cheap. They're actually an advantage, because as you can see, that I can flex it. So I think that that's going to work quite well. We've got some smaller ones, we've got a couple of medium ones and a large one. Now, a tip that I've been told is to pop some paint into the filler. This is silver, and what that will do, once we finish painting it, we might take it out for display somewhere, and it might accidentally get a knock. So obviously I printed this in silver plastic. We'll have a nice silver coat on the top, but if we should get a scratch on it, you're going to have filler colour in the middle. Obviously any scratches, it won't look good, but obviously with a bit of silver it'll help. So first thing I needed to do, a lot of the prep work that I've done we haven't actually needed to do. It's not a major problem, but the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to separate the rings. And the 2 rings we're going to mainly concern ourselves with today is the bottom ring and the dome. So I put the blue ring away. Now, because I've never used filler before, I'm going to do the silver ring. The absolute worst case scenario is that this is going to need reprinting, so this cost me less money than the dome. So what I'm going to do for the rings is I'm going to put a little scraping of filler around the outside, and then I am just going to put a little bit on the inside. That probably needs a bit of a clean up. So what I'm going to do is first of all we'll go around the outside, and then we'll try and get a little bit along there, and we'll get a little bit along there. For the dome, I'm only going to put filler on the upper edges, so I'm not going to worry about these panels yet. So we'll put as much as we can along there. It might come out a little bit scruffy, but that's how it's going to come out. We can always tidy up. So what I've been told is a golf ball size of filler to a pea size amount of this. So what I'm going to do, I've got a little metal tray here to do my mixing in. I've got my little bit of paint. Let's just check that that paint works okay. No, it's got a little silver thing on it. There we go. It's not going to come out until we remove that, is it? So what I'm going to do, the first batch, I'm going to do a golf ball size to a pea size of hardener. We're going to see how it goes. It might well be that the whole thing hardens before I had a chance to use it. So then the next batch we'll do, and we'll change it accordingly. So I might end up doing, say for example, a half a golf ball size. Okay, so I'm going to speed the next bit up, so hopefully it'll all go well. Right, so that's all I can do on that tonight. It was a little bit easier than I thought. I was probably panicking over nothing there. I started off really scraping it in, trying to use as little as I could, kind of like bread and butter, where I'm kind of spreading the butter on and then scraping as much off as I can. In the end, I decided it's more expensive, but just slap it on. My hand was aching. I'm not used to that kind of work, so I just slapped it on. I did use rather a lot. I don't know if that's normal. I don't know what a normal amount is to use. I can't open the tin now, so I can't actually show you what I've used. I did forget my gloves, and I will stress, do not do what I do. Use gloves. And now, when I opened the tin, I noticed it was a really strong smell. And after a minute or two, I didn't really notice it, so I didn't use my respirator. However, I'm regretting it now, because when I went to clean up in the bathroom, obviously there's no smells in the bathroom because I've got an extractor fan and the door's shut. When I came back into the bedroom, I just absolutely reeked of filler. So I made a big boo-boo there. But all I can really do now, I did also make a mess, but I'm figuring I can clean that up. So I haven't gone all the way up to the top of the pies, and that's because I wouldn't have had anywhere left to hold on to. I've done all around the surrounding edge, and to be honest with you, that's really hard now, fairly hard. I'm still going to leave it overnight. What I've been told is that it should harden within, it doesn't say on this one, but I'm sure I was told that you can start rubbing it down in about half an hour. But it also depends on the hardener. If you don't put enough hardener in, it's going to take longer to harden, if it ever even actually hardens. If you put too much hardener in, then it's going to harden really, really quickly. I found actually doing a golf ball sized at a time, if you're just slapping it on, that worked well for me. There were, towards the end of some of it, I was a little bit chalky and a little bit hard, but that's fine. I don't know if you can see it from there, but it's got a little bit rough, but that's fine. I think I can sand that down. So yeah, I suspect it's going to need another fill. I don't think I've done it that well. This is the first time I've ever done it. So what I'll do is I'll check it in the morning. We'll assess the damage. I might have to do some more, or I might just go for a sand. The original plan was fill it, give it a heavy sanding. Well, when I say heavy sanding, I mean nice rough 80 grit sanding. Put some filler primer over it, give it another sanding, and start to spray it. But I've also been ready for having to repeat a process. Each process I've never done before, so I don't know what the work is going to be involved. But I also know that we might also be using filler primer at extra stages, because primer is very good at showing up where there's mistakes. So what I'll do now is I'll leave that until the morning, and then we'll have another look, and then we'll get on to the next stage of the video. And then what we'll do is next week we'll give that a good sand. I don't know how I'm going to film it sanding, because I am not going to do it in my room, so I'm going to have to take it outside. I work 6 days a week, so I only get 1 day off, and if that 1 day is rainy, then I really can't do it. This is part of the reason why I'm trying to make videos in advance. I'm actually making this middle of January. What's this, episode 22, and I think I've just released episode 6. The reason for that is I want to get on with the R2 first of all, and sometimes I might find I'm able to get a lot done, and other times I'm not. Secondly, I really don't know what's involved with the next stages, so I'm actually trying to get lots and lots of stages done. Once I get to the electronics, I'm anticipating I'm going to have to order parts. Well, every time I order parts, it takes about 2 or 3 weeks to arrive. So if I get up to a video and I'm saying, right, okay, right, let's order electronics, there'll be no video for 3 weeks, because, you know, until the parts come. So this is why I'm trying to get ahead. So it is currently the middle of the winter, even though I think this one is due for release. If I've got my dates correct, you'll be watching this beginning of April. But as I say, it's January when I film this, so yeah, I'll see when I can sand it. So yeah, it's all weather dependent. Okay guys, so let's cut to the morning. So the next piece is ring 2 piece 17A. Now I'm a little bit concerned at this point because I've been having problems with my printer, and also I was having a lot of prints sitting around, where I've been printing so much. I've just got pieces all over the place in boxes. So what I've decided to do is I'm going to slow down the print. So whereas I could do 2 pieces this week, I'm just going to do the one, and this one being ring 2 17A, it's only going to be a nearly 4 hour print. Okay, so no problems with this print this week. 0.3 layer height, usual procedure, came out really well. Please excuse the blue painter's tape on the printer. When things go wrong, I will try new things and I'll stick with them for as long as they work. Okay, so we start this week with 54.98, and obviously we add £10 to that. Now the logic lights, I'm not able to get an exact cost. The actual printing came to, I think it was about £1.12, £1.20. What I had a problem with was pricing the wire and the LEDs and the solder. The reason for that is I bought the LEDs in bulk, but the LEDs cost roughly about a penny each. So what I've done is when you think that the wire comes on a big roll, and I just cut a little bit off and a little bit of solder, it's probably 10 LEDs probably came to about 15-20 pence each. So I've just called it £1.30. If it's not right, it's not a million miles off. We then paid £5.99 for the filler. Now it is cheaper to buy filler in a much larger tub. I have gone out and bought a larger tub as well for what we're going to do later on, but obviously I bought something just to try, so that came to £5.99. and the body ring piece 17A, that came to £1.34. That meant we spent quite a lot this week at £8.63. However, the balance is increasing, and we now have £56.35 to carry on to next week.